A woman named Carol, 68 years old, sits down at her kitchen table with her morning coffee. She's been retired for a few years, and her Social Security check covers most of her basic expenses. One afternoon, out of curiosity more than anything else, she logs into her online Social Security account just to check her next payment date. But instead of closing the page right away, she scrolls down a little further. And there, buried under a few tabs, she finds something she's never really looked at closely before: her full earnings record. Line after line, year after year, going all the way back to her first job decades ago. She squints at one line. The number looks off, way lower than she remembers earning that year. She sits there for a moment, unsure if it's a mistake or if she's simply misremembering. But it makes her wonder, what if this number has been wrong the entire time? And what if that mistake has been quietly shrinking her monthly check for years? That one moment of curiosity is exactly why this video matters. Why this matters. Here's something most people don't realize. Your Social Security benefit isn't just handed to you based on a general formula. It's calculated directly from your personal earnings history, the actual wages reported to the Social Security Administration under your name, year by year, going back to when you first started working. If even 1 year on that record is wrong, too low, missing entirely, or attributed to the wrong person, it can lower the benefit calculation. And because that calculation locks in once you start receiving benefits, an error that's never caught can mean smaller checks for the rest of your life. This isn't rare. Earnings records can contain mistakes because of a typo on an old W-2, a name change that wasn't updated properly, a Social Security number entered incorrectly by an employer decades ago, or wages that were reported under a slightly different name. Most of these errors happened years or even decades before you ever noticed, which is exactly why so few people ever go back and check. So the reason this matters right now is simple. If you're retired, close to retirement, or already receiving benefits, the earnings record behind your check may still contain an error nobody has ever corrected, and correcting it could mean a higher monthly payment going forward, along with back pay in some cases, depending on your situation. What you'll learn in this video. By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly what this document is, why it matters so much for your benefit amount, how to actually look at it yourself, what kind of errors to look for, and the practical steps to take if something looks wrong. This isn't about a secret loophole or a guaranteed increase. It's about making sure the number the government is using to calculate your check is actually correct. Let's start with the document itself. The document, your Social Security statement and earnings record. The document at the center of all this is called your Social Security statement, and specifically the earnings record section inside it. If you're receiving Social Security now, or if you plan to apply in the future, this record is the foundation everything else is built on. The Social Security Administration uses your highest earning working years to calculate your benefit. For retirement benefits, that calculation generally looks at a set number of your highest earning years across your working life, adjusts them for wage growth over time, and averages them into a formula that produces your monthly benefit. That means every single year listed on your earnings record has the potential to affect your final number. If a high earning year from your career was accidentally recorded as a low earning year or left off the record completely, it could be quietly pulling your monthly benefit down without you ever knowing it. Here's what makes this especially important. The Social Security Administration relies on employers to report wages accurately. Most of the time, that reporting works exactly as it should. But mistakes do happen. A wrong Social Security number typed into old payroll paperwork, a maiden name used on one job and a married name used on another, with the two records never quite lining up. A self-employment year where income wasn't reported the way it should have been. Individually, each of these sounds like a small clerical issue. But because your benefit is based on your entire earnings history, even one incorrect year can shift the final average used to calculate your check. How to actually look at your earnings record. If you're thinking, I've never actually looked at this, you're far from alone. Many people go their entire working life without ever opening this specific part of their Social Security information. Here's generally how people access it. You can create or log into your personal My Social Security account directly through the Social Security Administration's official website. Once you're logged in, there is a dedicated section showing your full earnings history, broken down year by year, showing the wages that were reported under your name and social security number for each year you worked. If you're not comfortable using the online system, you also have the option of requesting a paper copy of your earnings record by contacting the Social Security Administration directly, either by phone or in person at a local office. The key thing to understand is this record has always been available to you. It's not hidden, it's just easy to overlook because most people assume it's automatically correct and never think to double check it. What to look for once you're viewing it. Once you're looking at your earnings history, here's what actually matters. Go year by year and ask yourself whether the number reasonably matches what you remember earning that year. You're not trying to remember an exact figure down to the dollar. Nobody can do that for a job from 30 years ago. You're looking for numbers that seem clearly wrong. A year that shows zero income when you know you were working full-time. A number that looks dramatically lower than every year around it without an obvious explanation like reduced hours or a career change. A gap where an entire year seems to be missing altogether. Suppose you worked steadily at the same job for a decade, and every year on the record shows a similar, gradually increasing number. That's a good sign the record is accurate. But suppose there's one single year in the middle that suddenly drops to a fraction of the surrounding years, and you know you worked that entire year without interruption. That's the kind of inconsistency worth investigating. Another thing many people overlook is checking whether their name has ever changed through marriage, divorce, or any legal name change, and confirming that earnings from before and after that change are both properly connected to the same social security number. If they aren't, some of your earnings could technically exist in the system, but not be counted toward your benefit calculation because they were never matched to your current record. There's another situation worth mentioning. If you were ever self-employed, even briefly, it's worth paying close attention to those years specifically. Self-employment income reporting works differently than employer-reported wages, and errors are somewhat more common in these years simply because the reporting process depends more heavily on accurate self-reporting and tax filing. A realistic example. Let's walk through a realistic situation. Imagine someone named Robert who worked at the same manufacturing company for 18 years before retiring. When he finally sat down and reviewed his earnings record, he noticed that one particular year showed an amount noticeably lower than the years directly before and after it, even though he had worked full-time that entire year without any layoffs or reduced hours. He didn't assume it was a mistake right away. Instead, he did what anyone should do in this situation. He looked back through whatever personal records he still had, old pay stubs, tax documents, anything that might confirm what he actually earned that year, and compared them to what the Social Security Administration had on file. This is exactly the kind of situation where a discrepancy is worth raising directly with the Social Security Administration. Whether or not it turns into a correction depends on the documentation available and the specific circumstances, but the only way to know is to ask the question and provide supporting records if you have them. Common misunderstandings. There's one important misunderstanding worth clearing up here. Reviewing your earnings record does not automatically mean your benefit will increase. For a lot of people, when they check, everything lines up exactly as it should, and that's a good outcome too. It confirms your benefit is being calculated correctly. Another common misunderstanding is thinking that once you're already receiving benefits, it's too late to correct anything. That's not necessarily true. If you discover a genuine reporting error, you can still raise it with the Social Security Administration. Whether it affects your current or future payments depends on your specific circumstances, so this is something to discuss directly with them rather than assume one way or the other. There's also a difference worth understanding between a documentation issue and simply misremembering old numbers. It's genuinely difficult to recall exact income from a job you held 20 or 30 years ago. That's normal. The goal isn't to trust your memory completely, it's to use whatever supporting records you may still have, like old tax returns or pay stubs, to check against what the government has on file. What you should actually do. So what should you actually do with this information? First, if you haven't already, set up or log into your personal Social Security account and locate your earnings record. Second, go through it year by year, comparing it against your own memory and, if possible, any old tax documents or pay records you may still have. Third, if you notice something that looks clearly wrong, a missing year, a dramatic and unexplained drop, or wages that don't seem to be linked to your name at all, contact the Social Security Administration directly. explain what you've noticed, and ask what documentation, if any, would be needed to look into it further. Fourth, be patient with the process. Corrections to decades-old records can take time, and the outcome depends on what documentation still exists and what the review finds. Not every review results in a change, but for people whose records genuinely do contain an error, this is the only way it gets caught and fixed. And finally, even if everything checks out and there's no error at all, you now know for certain that your benefit is being calculated on accurate information, which is valuable peace of mind on its own. Let quotes bring this all together. Your Social Security benefit is built directly from your personal earnings record, and that record isn't automatically guaranteed to be error-free. Mistakes can happen because of old employer reporting issues, name changes, or gaps in self-employment reporting, and because these errors often happened years or decades ago, they can go unnoticed indefinitely. The good news is that this information has always been available to you, and checking it takes nothing more than logging into your own Social Security account or requesting a paper copy directly from the agency. If you find something that looks wrong, the right move is to reach out to the Social Security Administration with whatever supporting documentation you have and let them guide you through the review process. This isn't about chasing a guaranteed windfall. It's about making sure the number behind your monthly check has always been correct. And if it hasn't, giving yourself the chance to fix it. If you take one thing away from this video, let it be this. The number on your Social Security check depends entirely on decades of records most people have never actually looked at closely. Taking a few minutes to review yours costs you nothing, and for some people, it can genuinely make a meaningful difference. If anything in your own earnings history looks unclear or uncertain, the best next step is always to verify it directly with the Social Security Administration, since they can walk you through your specific situation with accurate, up-to-date guidance. If you found this video helpful, consider giving it a like, subscribing for more videos like this one, and sharing it with someone else who might benefit from checking their own record. Thanks for watching, and take care of yourself.